Yeah, good morning folks. Catherine here, your on-the-spot reporter, and the spot is the backyard. This is 11 AM, Saturday the 28th of March 2020, day 3 of the lockdown. Now I'm standing on the actual back doorstep. This is looking due east, and if I slowly move around, I'll be looking due north, pretty much dead north. So this is our apartment's backyard, and about 9 metres north to south and about 5 metres east to west. So as you see, it's really packed. It's packed. These cast oils right by the brick wall here, this is the unit is slightly offset with the neighbouring unit. They're mirror image identical, but anyway, so up against this wall, so therefore as north facing as I can get, although it's blocked from the western sun as the sun goes over the top of the roof. This is where the cast oils wintered, and that's why they stayed alive, although damaged a bit from frost or near frost. And several of them have stayed there. There's some cactus up against the wall. Oh, they were actually much taller, and I'll move around. It's a cold day today. I'm trying to keep the heat in. Oh, it's a little bit stuck on the cast oil. These cacti were cut down some, and I got some cuttings growing. This is the willow from my famous video about how the wilted willows on Worcester. See the cactus there is growing a thing. They grew from some cactus in a pot that was given to me by neighbours when they were clearing out their garden after the earthquake and their place had to be demolished. You can see the fig there. The washing line that stays in the upright position, it folds. I used to fold it up out of the way, especially if I was moving things around the garden, but explanation will continue. So there's the fig tree. Its leaves just starting to change colour, so they'll be losing the leaves soon. In the first part of the season, I actually picked the figs off because I don't really like figs, didn't want to eat them. I just wanted the energy to grow the tree bigger. Like many things, it's in a bucket-sized pot, as I've previously described. If you have blue buckets, they last longer. They seem to resist the ultraviolet light better. You see some good-sized figs there. Give you something for scale. So that's one, by New Zealand standards, pretty much a whopper, I would call it. In New Zealand we call that a heat pump, elsewhere you'd call it a reverse cycle air conditioner. So that's the outdoor unit, and I only used it on air conditioning, for 20 minutes, 5 times over summer. But yes, here in New Zealand, in the south of New Zealand, it's more used for heating in the winter half of the year. The palm foliage you can see is the Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chinese windmill palm. So that'll take negative 18 of frost. There's a video about that getting planted some years back. And there's a New Zealand cabbage tree that I've pruned and groomed when it was young to encourage it to grow palm-like with a single trunk. It's got one outgrowth there I need to trim off sometime. I've got so many pot plants around it I can't get to it. I borrowed the neighbour's ladder a couple of months back and I still couldn't get close enough to actually attend to it. It's now too high for me to conveniently and safely. New Zealand cabbage tree bifurcates. Every time it flowers it splits the sort of leader into two, and it's done that a few times now. It put out lots and lots of seed over the years. That was just like a tiny little metre high flax bush about 12-13 years ago. So I'm gonna now these I was sent very kindly by a gentleman in the North Island, a commercial palm breeder. This is not just a New Zealand native palm, Nikau palm, which is rare on the world stage. It's found down to about 50 mile, about 80 kilometres from here. There's a little place near the sea, so we are at its extreme southern edge. It is the most southerly found palm in the world. But this is the Pitt Island version, so it's on a little island off the coast of another slightly bigger island, 500 miles or 800 k's out to sea from Christchurch. So it's and its natural habitat, it's endangered because of sheep farming that's happened for the last 100 odd years. I've especially got the dog barking for you. I've got the dog turned up to maximum from the neighbours. But yes, a few years ago, someone from went and got some seeds of that palm and have propagated them, and now quite a few of the ones in Auckland are the Pitt Island variety, and that's where seeds come from. So we're just backing up to that's obviously the kitchen back door and the window. That's our castor oils, or the bigger of them. They're only in a bucket with holes in the bottom. Feijoa, the lattice between us and the neighbour. There is actually a path you can theoretically walk through. The two biggest and best pomegranates. Over there, the Housing Commission units. I've got some Australian casuarinas, which were hard to get here. Obviously it's a frost-tolerant variety. Not all of them are lived, but then there were so many crammed into buckets. That poplar is just growth from this year, but that's because I cut it down. I had one about 6 metres high there, tall and skinny, but it was a leftover one had grown after some earthquake. And see, when this next door place all fell down, and it was the boundary wall because it was like a 100-year-old house, I temporarily put in a row of poplars just to have something there. And they were pulled out when the fence was put in and the new places were built. But that just grew back from a piece of root, and I left it there because it wasn't really in my way. But I decided I didn't want a big, huge poplar there, partly because it would infringe on my ability to perhaps install a radio aerial. So I cut it down to a stump. I didn't mind the stump regrowing this year. I will cut that down again this winter, but I'll keep those as cuttings, as pretty big cuttings. Yeah, so 2 pomegranates, a bunch of cactus here. Obviously I tried cactus specifically, and well, most of what I grow needs as full sun as I can give it, and I have a limited amount of full sun, and everything has to be all friends together. It's a bit damp, it rained a bit overnight. Here's some pomegranate seedlings. These are from January I planted them. It only cost me $3.49 for one pomegranate at the supermarket. Yes, they're available for a short period of time. I got some loquat seeds, some loquat fruits, and ate them and got the seeds. And they came from the Polytech down the road. These ones were overhanging a fence on the footpath, and I had a spare pomegranate seed got put in there. So there's a good loquat happening there, and it looks like there's another little one just coming. Just there it is. I did have to use a few snail pellets. So one poison I've had to use a couple of times. The snail pellets have sometimes the snails, they were eating the things, seedlings to death. You know, if 1 or 2 snails in the environment, I don't mind, but if they're eating seedlings when they first sprout to death, I can't have that. This is the evergreen albizia, which is very rare in New Zealand, certainly in the South Island. There's one a couple of streets away from here, a couple of blocks away. I've got the police siren for you to listen to. A lot more, I say cactus, but they're agave, and the little ones just sit under the shelf. This was originally a shelf of one of those little plastic bag greenhouses things, and after many, many years, the metal parts, the plastic had long since fallen to bits, and had been, there was so little of the metal it all rusted and fell apart, so I'm used one of these galvanised iron shelf units. Here's some carob seeds, which I just planted in February. there you go. I only planted them in late February, so they're tiny bit over a month old. I did pre-soak them. Those seeds came from up north. So I put in 10 seeds, I got 7 up. Some more locusts. Those were possibly mine. No, that was at the Polytech. Yep, that was the seeds I got just before Christmas, and I got some other seeds just after Christmas. So they're a little bit more advanced than the ones you saw up top. I'll just give them a half a turn. Little palm tree, I dug up a little seedling, just like a blade of grass. I dug up the parent was a Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chinese one. This is one in a pot. Oh, all of mine were just bought as little ones, which are still $19 each in like a 6-inch pot, 150ml pot. And some have got bigger because the one by the front door's got bigger. That'll be a separate video. Right, I'll make this clear. This is the Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chinese windmill palm, cold tolerant to -18, etc., etc., snow. Goodness, they're called petioles. The leaf stalks here, you can rub your finger on them. They maybe got wrinkles in them, but they're not prickles. This is the Mexican cotton palm, Washingtonia robusta, and it has these little hook-shaped thorns, and they get bigger and bigger as the fronds get bigger. So yes, these will rip into your skin and make you bleed, and you'll be unhappy. So there we go. Parsley's going to seed. I've got the high-tech rain gauge operating, and you see that we had to do just enough overnight to be annoying. I'll just give you... Now, I can't back up. I can only get to about 1.5 meters from the lattice. Oh, there's some young pomegranates. These ones I just moved the other day when I did some potting up. Obviously they're sitting on the grass, scruffy lawn. Their roots would go into the lawn, that would be a bad thing. But I've only just put them about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago when I did some potting up. So I'll need to keep moving them. That's right. Oh no, I didn't. I set them onto upside down plant pot sources. So A, they get drainage, and B, they won't root into the ground. This is just it's thorny. This is the thorny boysenberry. I have thorny boysenberry and I have thornless blackberry. There's the other fig I have. I gave the third one of the same variety to a friend. Here's some canary date palms. That's the great big one with the diamond-shaped pattern on the trunk that you see in parks and that sometimes. They'll take about -11, -12 of frost. So you can grow those throughout much in New Zealand and the very southern part of England. Those are all ones I grew from seed, or little wee seedlings that I got just falling on the ground outside at a public park. So here's the washing line, and this is why it doesn't turn anymore. So this is the cold tolerant so-called banana passion fruit, not related to banana at all. I had some and ate them and grew them in Australia, and they were yellow. The fruits that I was given of these ones were not good quality. They'd fallen on the ground already, whatever, on the footpath, whatever. But they were creamy off-white, so slightly different variety. But I can tell from the leaf that it's a banana passion fruit. They come from high altitude parts of South America, which is why they can tolerate a lot more frost than the normal subtropical passion fruit, or black passion fruit that you tend to grow in places like Perth or Sydney. We've got the cat putting in an appearance for us. Here we go, that's the cat, that's Mum's cat. So yeah, this particular, I was given some banana passion fruits, and I got lots of seedlings to sprout. I did them 3 different ways. Hello, Puss. Puss come to see me. I tried eating them and carefully sucking the goodness of the pulp down my throat and spitting out the seed. I tried doing my best to rinse them in a kitchen sieve, a colander. Neither of them was very successful. And I tried just scooping the pulpy fruit insides out and just laying it down on the pot and covering it with the potting mix. And they all grew with about the same level of efficiency. The sucked and spat out seeds sprouted a little bit quicker, but for the amount of effort that was involved, here we go. The cat does like the cabbage tree. It makes a nice ladder to get up on the roof. So I had so many seedlings. Some of the first that I separated out from the several pots that I had, I just put, as you see here, about 5 or 10 together in this about a 12-inch or 300mm diameter pot, slightly bigger than a bucket. So that's actually several plants, there about 5 at least. The other ones stayed in the small, about a 6-inch pot, about this big. Look, another castor oil, one of my favourite plants. Lovely, just don't eat it, drink it or smoke it. And the others I put into these smaller ones. It was about 3 or 4, well, I've broken the edge of that, that's clever. But about 3 or 4 in each pot. So there was a couple of spares in case one died, and also to give the cross-pollination. So some of these, once they get a bit more grown, might eventually be given away to other people, or planted elsewhere, if I have an elsewhere or find an elsewhere. An evergreen albizia, what's that one, about 1 metre high? Not quite 1 metre. Yeah, so that's why they've tied on to the washing line with some $2 shop rope. Reject shop, you might call it New South Wales. I'm not quite sure what they call it in, I think they call it Red Dot in Perth. But, of course, most things here cost more than $2 now, but they used to be called the $2 shop. So there's several there, and a slightly bigger one on the end. The palm there, that's the, which we saw from the back door, Trachycarpus fortunei, the Chinese windmill palm. There's another bigger one here in a pot. You can't even see the pot. Here's the kind of pot it's in, or tub. It's one of these 42 litre. In Australia they sell them as a drink tub. You put ice in them. I drill a few holes in the bottom. They were much cheaper than other plastic tubs here. They're very soft and floppy, but once you fill them with potting mix, they're quite rigid. Or they're rigid enough. And half or third the price of other plastic tubs, or less than that. So this one's much bigger than that one by the back door that I showed you, and this is one of the most biggest robust palms here. This is a Washingtonia robusta again, but as opposed to the smaller one I showed you. So this has got big hooky thorny things on it, but this one's in the ground, and it was only put in the ground a couple of years back now. There's a video on it, almost certainly. There's a video where I talk about that I will probably plant it. So I've got palm, and somewhat palm looking like New Zealand cabbage tree. That is my biggest and longest lived evergreen albizia. And all of those little seedlings I showed you, the albizia ones, including that like metre high one here, are seedlings grown from that one from this year, this year's seed. These are the edible date palms, which look like a blade of grass, and you know, some of them are onto their third. They'll develop more frondulate foliage later. So I bought 24 dates because they're like $30 a kilo, and now just over a year old now. It was summer of last year, and or last summer, and I potted up half of them. I had all the seeds in 2 big pots, so half of them I got potted up this year, and half of them I'll pot up next year. Bootia capitata. Yeah, I bought these as little more than little blade of grass seedlings at $2 each at the Bunnings, and it was very rare that they had them. I went to both Bunnings that Christchurch's have and bought out every one that was available, but yeah, it's the only time I've known them to have little palm seedlings for sale like that. As you see, it's extremely dense in there with seedlings wedged in between everything. Peach tree, there's a locust in a plastic tub. The poplars there are actually in a plastic tub. behind it. It's so packed in. Here's some carobs. Well, there's lots of stuff here. There's there's twisted willow, Salix tortuosa. There's castor oil, Ricinus communis. There's pomegranate, Punica granatum. There's Cape gooseberry, Physalis edulis. There's carob, Serotonus siliqua, I think. Here's the thornless blackberry. I don't mind thornless blackberry. Let it grow. If it's in the way, I hack it back a bit. I get a few fruits off it, but I haven't got the room to let it do its best so I can get more fruit off it. As you see, some of the largest of the carobs are now as high as I am. There's 12 carobs in there, and they date from, I've had them 4 or 5 years now. And I got the cough in just to make up for the dog hasn't barked for a bit. And there's a locust in there coming up. It's in a bucket pot at the back. That's actually a bought one, so it's a named variety that's either grafted or they're grafted. They graft them onto quince. When I've bought named varieties of locusts before, they're grafted onto a quince rootstock. I know because the rootstock's shot up on some of them. That's actually Kusunoki. All of the fruits I've ever had from a locust in my own garden are from the Kusunoki, spelt with a K, Kusunoki variety. If I'm looking over here, these deciduous trees which are about to lose their leaves, that's a cherry, that's a quince, and that's a cherry, which is a bit more invisible behind it. I had one Stella and one Lapin cherry, but their side branches that held the labels got broken off when the house next door fell on them in the earthquake in 2011. So I deliberately got 2 of them so they would help cross-pollinate. I don't get any cherries off them. The birds eat the cherries, and they never even say thank you. Now this is deciduous tamarisk, which I experimented with a bit in Australia. It grew pitifully slowly, far slower than the evergreen one. But here in New Zealand, or in the South Island of New Zealand, the only tamarisk I've seen is a deciduous one. So we was at the seaside back about Christmas. I know don't know if it's not the right time of year, but anyway, I took 2 small cuttings from one by the side of the road. From those cuttings, I got two small pieces of branch. From those, I got 6 cuttings, and put them in two pots of 3. And it looks like in both pots, I've had 2 sprout successfully. They were this does get to the western aspect of the sun before it drops behind the roof, but I had to move them here because I needed somewhere else. Things have to share the sunlight here, they do. It's just the limited amount of space I have. And there's some blackcurrant. There's a bucket full of blackcurrants plants. There might be some leaves just poking through. They are in there amongst the thornless blackberry, and there's a grapevine in a pot as well. This is the Acacia etiophylla, which is a South Australian Flinders Range wattle, which was absolutely one of my saving heroes when I lived in West Australia. It would grow. It would withstand the conditions of salt, desert, winter frost. Very occasionally some branches get snapped off in the wind. All of mine are grown from seed. The biggest one is over there in a largish pot, and I have to keep hacking it back to keep it small. Keep giving it a trim. Wattles don't like being pruned. They don't like having the roots messed with. Australia etiophylla is more forgiving of those things than any other wattle. So if you can grow it, grow it. Remember, some of these things did start from like the Acacia etiophylla. When on some of my earlier visits, I bought seeds in, and at the time, if you declare them to customs, they would inspect them, and if it wasn't on their, forbidden weed list, they would give it back to you. When I came in 2007, I presented my seeds, and the officers quite simply told me lies and took all my seeds. So, anyway, it is what it is. So, but but those were seeds I'd bought here earlier and left with Mum and Dad, you see, so I was able to get some plants growing from them. And that includes the castor oils. Because one thing with them being, remember, castor oil seeds and Acacia etiophila seeds will stay alive for many years. These ones I got sprouted, that one I sprouted when the seed was only a few years old, and there's actually 4 Acacia etiophilas amongst there, in buckets of 2 each, because there's 2 in that bucket. That's the drab blue, grey, blue, bluish foliage. It's not a pretty green, but hey, it's a tough plant. And for many months of the year, you get a fabulous display of yellow flowers. But yes, all those later ones were sprouted from seed that was already many years old, because I'd bought it in many years ago on one of my short visits to see Mum and Dad. Yeah, and I really can't get into much more of the garden. Amongst the thornless blackberry that's heading up that way is the tree behind, the shrub behind is the neighbour's Aralia, Japanese Aralia, or Fatsia japonica. So that's hardy to negative 18 Celsius. It has those sort of palmy looking leaves, very hardy. It gets to a maximum of about 4 metres by 4 metres. It's a very sappy wood, so it's not true wood. It's just thick stems like a shrub, but it drops seeds, and the seeds, especially in well-watered pots, I often see little seedlings, and so I dig them up, and I'll dig one out here, and they're recognisable at a young age. So I dig them out as just the size of a tiny coin, pot them up in a little pot, and here we go. That'd be good for a windbreak or something. So they have a look similar to castor oil. I've done videos on it. They've done look similar to castor oil, but they can take... I've seen some tiny cosmetic damage to the flowers during snow. So, on those few occasions. But they've got that look. See, there's another castor oil there. Now, these are locusts. Now, these were all ones I grew from seed from the Polytech or from my house. And yes, I've got them labelled which ones are which. So which ones are actually seedlings of the Kusanoki, the named variety, and which ones are just the ones from the plant growing at the Polytech. There used to be 3 plants growing at the Polytech. They employ idiots for gardeners, and they've cut down 2 of them to stumps, or one of them I couldn't even find the stump, but one was still there. And so these seeds are from last year's locusts, and as you can see, some of them are close to 1/2 metre high. Now there's some bits of the cactus that I cut down into pieces. So it was so tall it kept blowing over, so I cut the tops off of the 2 of them, and I got 2 cuttings of each one. Another castor oil, plenty of Cape gooseberries. Now I've been along to the radio club twice and taken along big plastic bins of Cape gooseberry plants, Physalis edulis or Physalis peruviana, whichever you prefer, and I left an information sheet with it there so that people could photograph it with their phone, because a lot of South Island people don't know about this Cape gooseberry, but if you can keep them alive over winter, they will grow for more than 1 year. Otherwise you can just grow them as an annual like you do tomatoes in this climate. Yeah, so nearly 1/2 metre high for the best of those locusts seedlings in just over a year. So in this climate, harvest the locusts in December and January. So castor oil, only 1/2 metre high. It's taken a couple of years to get there. That was taken inside to keep alive, I think. And look at all the little seeds it's got. Yeah. And it'll be doing cross-pollination with all its friends. Castor oil there with seeds. That one's in a bucket-sized pot. And when we think of the locusts from this year, so yeah, can get up to a third of a metre, if not quite half a metre, but over a third of a metre, but a wee bit less than half in a year. That's a feijoa. There's actually two. It's in, what would you call it, a window box kind of pot. At the time it was very short. If you see how it's broken here, apart from me pricking myself on the cactus, this was the original one, got snapped off during the earthquake, and I had two seedlings, so they're not named varieties, they're seedlings, and I put them both in this window box, being I was short of pots. There's things that had broken pots, I didn't have enough pots anyway, so I put two in this, and it sprouted, or it had a very small branch to one side, so it became a new plant. Shouldn't it have grown more than that in 9 years? Well, yes, but it's confined in a pot. And this is actually named variety. This is unique. See, I had again, it's unhappy because it's pot bound in a pot, and I've had this issue. Even if I cut them, take them out and root prune them, put them back in with fresh potting mix, get the cough in there. There's a limit to how much that helps them. So, but yeah, in Australia I had a few feijoas, and on the label it always says semi self-fertile. Well, that's a polite way of saying they're not very bloody self-fertile at all. This is unique. Now the fruits are a little bit smaller at the small end for feijoas, but it is the only truly self-fertile feijoa. So if you want to grow it, grow that one. I've also got some Apollo. Now I only bought them because they were super cheap, because they are PVR, plant copyright patented. Some lawyer sitting on his fat ass and never doing a day's work in his life just clips a ticket and gets money every day from people buying them. But I got some, and of course if you reproduce from them, those American lawyers will be after you. Whereas plain seedling feijoas or unique or other non-copyrighted ones you can propagate. But yeah, I've got a couple of unique ones, one out the front, one out the back, and a number of seedlings. The seedlings I bought were much cheaper. I've actually given away a fair few feijoa plants over the years because I'd bought quite a few. They're good for this climate. You can put them in as a windbreak hedge. You can put them in, keep them clipped down your driveway or something, and a productive windbreak and take up space along the edge of a drive or something. But if I just got a limited space here. I mean, look, I've even got some cactus or agave plants in a tiny. There's about 7 of them there, in a tiny little ones, and hanging in an old partly broken hanging basket. You got the you have to pay money to buy these. You pick them up off the side of the road when people throw them out in Australia. These agave plants, and of course they put babies out all around their bottom. And when in a pot, I'm not sure here's one here. Oh, that's going to be too hard to get. It's rooted into the ground a bit. Often they're coming out the bottom as well. That has got roots in the ground, that's why it didn't want to move. Often they burst the pot open and they're got all little babies coming out the holes of the bottom of the pot. So that's where these ones came from. And again, their growth's been hindered simply because they're all packed in and they're pot bound and whatever. So I've got plenty ready to establish a cactus garden, or to have perimeter control near where unauthorised people might want to enter a place, if I had enough of a place to plant them. The mint's going to flower. I picked them off earlier in the year. I've left them now. The bees, there's a bee having a go at one, because we've got enough mint. It just goes here by the back door. Thorny boys and